Ole Miss recruiting transfer portal wide receivers, that was not exactly on my bingo card.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about where Ole Miss might go in the transfer portal and to why, to my surprise, wide receiver popped up, and specifically larger type wide receivers they're being looked at. So I put on my Sherlock Holmes detective hat, got my pipe ready to smoke, and started looking for clues. We talk about what I found at the wide receiver and cornerback position potentially, and we look at the running back room post Kedrick Reescano about where Ole Miss is going into this 2024 college football playoff run. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your first listen, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. All right, the week of the 4th of July, July 2nd, we are going to have a meet and greet in the Jackson area. It'll probably be in either Madison or Flowood. The location and the time is to be determined, but it will be July 2nd. So look out for something about that as we get a little bit closer. It's happening. We're going to do it now. I had way too many people reach out about that to not do it. There's still time to join the Grove Collective and see Jackson Dart and Eli Manning this May 6th. Couple of goats right there. Go to thegrovecollective.com and join the day to go listen to both of them talk a little ball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, so I put on my Sherlock Holmes hat, as I love to do. Now, for those that do not know, this is how I knew about Princely Amon Ellen before everybody else. This is how I knew about Pooh Paul before everybody else, is through all of this detective work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not, but it genuinely gives us an idea of who we should pay attention to moving forward. Now, one of the things that I noticed happening was Ole Miss offered a wide receiver from Iowa. Yes, you heard that correctly. They offered a wide receiver named Jacob Bostic from Iowa. He has no receptions, no yards, and no touchdowns. But honestly, that could have been a senior at Iowa because of how bad that offense was. But he was just a true freshman that redshirted his first year. Nothing nefarious, anything like that. 6'2", 183 pounds. He has a chance to be a bigger type wide receiver. He was offered by Ole Miss, which got me thinking. I started thinking wide receivers, and I have not been doing that previously. But who all is Ole Miss recruiting at wide receivers? Is this a trend, and is anybody something we should pay attention to? So I immediately hopped on the Jackson Dart Instagram page and started cross-referencing people of potentials that Ole Miss might be interested in that would fill the role of this wide receiver position. When I did that in my travels, I saw that Ole Miss had offered Nick Nash, a wide receiver from San Jose State. He finished last year with 48 catches, 728 yards, 8 touchdowns. Like Trey Harris, a former quarterback, somebody that is still learning the wide receiver position. This is a high upside guy, and he's a very talented receiver as well. Whenever you look at what he did a year ago, 48 catches, 728 yards, 8 touchdowns. This was suspected it was going to be a breakout year for him at San Jose State. He entered the transfer portal. Whenever you look at this, he is followed by Jackson Dart on Instagram. Now, for those that don't know, if you are a transfer portal product and you get followed by Jackson Dart, that's probably a pretty good idea of at least directions that Ole Miss is going in. Nick Nash follows that. He was followed on Instagram by Jackson Dart. And as somebody that is widely responsible for putting together Ole Miss's roster this season, people should at least pay attention when clues like this happen. Now, he wasn't the only player that plays the wide receiver position that was followed by Jackson Dart. And another player that we need to look at is from Arizona State. His name is Elijah Badger. He was transferring out a couple of hours after Jaden Rashada basically said he was transferring out. He's a situational player to where he had a good year, 65 catches, 713 yards, and 3 touchdowns for a bad Arizona State football team. This was not a good football team. He still was able to put up at least a lot of catches and at least a lot of yards. Good football player, but as you can see here, he was followed by Jackson Dart. He's another larger type wide receiver. Like whenever you have somebody like him, Elijah Badger, 6'2", 190 pounds. He's another one that could do a little bit of that Trey Harris type stuff. This looks like the role that Ole Miss may be trying to fill through the transfer portal. And when you look at the Ole Miss wide receiver units, you have Trey Harris and you have Aiden Williams. You have a couple of guys that have not gotten there yet. You cannot count on players until they enroll in school and they get there. And then you have a bunch of little guys. So it makes sense that Ole Miss probably needs a larger wide receiver. I've mentioned a couple of times needing a Kerry Johnson on this football team. He had a couple of 12-catch games a year ago, including against Colorado and against UCLA. Like I said, 65, 713, 3 touchdowns, even ran the ball 11 times for 51 yards over the course of the season. You can see his stats again right there. Now, those are the 2 wide receivers that popped up in my investigation. And like I said, it made me wonder about this wide receiver unit. And it's probably the best room in college football right now, but I think they're trying to do things. Either they're going to take a transfer portal that has multiple years of eligibility, so next year's Trey Harris is available or next year's Deion Smith is available, or they're just trying to find another big body just in case. Somebody that they can grab from the G5 level or from Arizona State or Iowa. That Iowa's on there as well. He was like 6'2", 180. And if you looked at Nick Nash over the course of the year, he was 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a guy, like I said, he had 6 catches against Toledo. If you look at high-level competition, 6 for 89 against USC with 3 touchdowns in one of the games of the season. The dates don't really match up, but maybe that was like a week 1 game or a week 0 game, 8/26. So we'll see exactly how that goes. He was 1 for 24 against Coastal Carolina in the Hawaii Bowl, against UNLV and San Diego State. 3 catches, 4 catches. Guy that manned the outside of the field and manned it pretty well. It's interesting because I did not go into this season expecting wide receiver to be a focus of the Ole Miss Rebels going forward. That is hilarious in an extent. But Nick Nash and Elijah Badger and Jacob Bostic are 3 names that people probably should take out that I found through my detective work of people that have at least a tie to the University of Mississippi. One of them, Jacob Bostic, has an offer. The other ones, we need to pay attention to what's going on there as well. Interesting type stuff. But thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. So it's interesting at least that I was able to find an Ole Miss tie on all those players on that side of the ball, but it isn't the only one that we need to pay attention to. All right, game off. We got to pause right here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. We've got a flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. And the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. Unique stickers you can trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting each and every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own and unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. There's always a new timed event that helps you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover on Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinion, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, we looked at the wide receiver. That was one area that a surprise signing seems likely to pop up over the next month. We'll see exactly how that goes. Now, another position that we need to look at is cornerback. And at cornerback at Ole Miss, you have Trey Amos, and everybody knows about what Trey Amos can do. He's a top-level cornerback. He's probably going to be CB1 when the season starts. After that, you have Brandon Turnage, who, according to Juice Wells, had a pretty good spring practice. And you have Chris Graves, and you have Cedrick Beavers. Unproven, really young guy who actually did get a start against Georgia, by the way. And Brandon Turnage, who is a new transfer over from Tennessee. So maybe you are looking for another piece that you can put in that room. A player that instantly popped up is this guy. His name is Isaiah Hamilton. He was a starting cornerback at Houston. He's entered the transfer portal yesterday, followed by Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart has followed this young man for a couple of minutes. So this is something that it has been done. This is a guy that started out his career at Texas Southern. He had 50 tackles a year ago, 4 interceptions, 4 fastest defended. He's kind of moving up and up and up. Maybe a Southeastern Conference stop is in his future. But getting a guy like Isaiah Hamilton, what it would do would allow Jaden Canady, would allow Yam Banks, would allow John Saunders to focus on their middle of the field positions and not have to potentially to spread out what they do. Now, if Isaiah Hamilton did ended up getting recruited and all of that stuff, he is a guy that would be instantly kind of penciled in as a starter on the other side of the field from Trey Amos. He's a really good football player. He really is. You see his picture up there right now, to where he's got the ball in his hand. So he obviously just had a pick as well. Good player. It makes me wonder, though, which players in the transfer portal and which positions do you think that Ole Miss still needs? Put them in the comments, okay? Just let me know in the comments section the position that Ole Miss needs to recruit. And also, don't forget to put in your location, your hometown, and all that, where you're writing from, because I am genuinely interested about that. But Ole Miss had offered a wide receiver in the transfer portal yesterday, and there's a couple other guys with ties to Ole Miss in this whole transfer portal thing that has gotten into the portal. That is interesting. And then this cornerback situation, I think that Ole Miss is going to sign 1 or 2 players that we're not necessarily expecting. And like I said, but going into this video, surprises. And these are players that might be surprising. And after last year, when Spencer Sanders and Walker Howard came into a quarterback room with Jackson Dart and all of that, nothing can be surprising. If Ole Miss adds players at every single position on the field, you can't be surprised by it, because there's history there. There's a past example of them doing exactly that in a high value position. So if Ole Miss brings in another running back, another offensive lineman, another defensive lineman, another linebacker, another DB, there's not a lot you can say, because in the sample size of Lane Kiffin being at Ole Miss since 2020, he has added a good player to whatever room. He is never, oh no, we're good to go there. No, he is a best player available. We'll take them and we'll figure it out. That's what he's done the entire time. And Isaiah Hamilton would be another example of him doing exactly that. So I am really curious to see how Ole Miss will handle. Now, in the transfer portal, like I said, I highly recommend that on Instagram, everybody at least follows and looks at Jackson Dart's Instagram follows, because whoever he follows that's new, these are names that you should at least pay attention to. And as long as this transfer portal is kind of a thing, pretty much for the next month or so, the next 6 weeks or so, I would pay attention to that from time to time to see if there's any new names that is populated on that, because they use that. They use FaceTime. They use Xbox Live. They use stuff that as an older generation, you don't really understand. People younger than me, though, they completely understand. And Jackson Dart he's working really hard to make this roster at a different level. Now you have Lane Kiffin and you have the coaching staff. Like Kevin Smith tweeted out a chess piece, meaning like maybe a chestnut checkers or something like that. And we'll see. It sounds like might have been a offensive commitment gotten. And if it was Kevin Smith he was talking about, I don't know if it was somebody in the portal or somebody in high school. Was it a Jamarian Morrow type commitment for that? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see exactly how it goes. But you can see that they're always constantly looking at adding. I realize that there are people that in this modern age of college football, they're completely turned off about all of this moving. I get it, 100%. It's one of the reasons I talk about it, but I just want the best players to fill the laundry of my team. That is my thesis statement of being an Ole Miss football fan. I want the best players to populate my favorite team's uniform. And if that happens and the team becomes good, I'm happy. If the team comes bad, I am not going to latch on to a player like I did, say, in 1985 when I was a huge Willie Green fan, or 89 when I was a huge Randy Baldwin fan, or a Corey Philpott fan, and I guess 92. All of those were in my younger days, but those were players that I gravitated to. They don't really exist anymore. Now, it's about that uniform, and if you're not wearing that uniform, I don't necessarily care what's going on, if that makes sense. I'm going to pay attention to this Ole Miss uniform, and I'm going to make the best out of it possible. This transfer portal window is going to be a lot of fun if you let it be. If you are able to separate yourself from the way that football was in 2008 in college sports, then the transfer portal can be fun. When you're just kind of wheeling, dealing, trading baseball cards, transfer portal can be a whole lot of fun. Whenever there's little things that you can be interested in and you can check on and like do Sherlock Holmes detective work, it can be a lot of fun. And especially in the doldrums of summer that's about to come up, it's a way to pass some time. Because as it sits right now on May 2nd, you have about a month or so until summer officially starts. But now, let's be honest, it kind of already has. And once you get to June, it gets a little bit interesting and it gets a little bit hard, and the content completely slows down because it's June and you have to fight for things to write about and talk about and things like that. July is the SEC Media Days and everything starts back. You essentially have 2 months in the modern content cycle to where it's down periods. And yes, I understand that basketball and baseball is a thing. I'm not going down on them. But whenever you look at football, football is king. It is. It's king. There's 2 months that are down periods in football in 2024, and that is February and that is June. Those are the 2 down months that you have to just kind of make it through. If you do that, you have a chance to be very successful, and you have to be willing to talk about what fans want to hear about. And we have fun on this show. We have a lot of fun on this show. Basically, having a conversation And that's what we do. And that's kind of what I do because I am a fan. I like to talk about what fans are curious about and what fans want to know and my opinion of what's going on. And hopefully, if you guys like it, you'll stick around and watch the show the next day. This is a fun show because if you listen to all the other podcasts around Ole Miss, and this is not a slam on them at all, but it's all the same show. It is all literally the same show. They might have different names, different voices, but at the end of the day, it's the same exact show. And that is because they are the equivalent, are doing the equivalent of reading something that just happened, reading the newspaper, the current events. They're going to dominate everything. I don't do that. Ole Miss fans don't do that. Fans talking to each other don't do that. It might be the middle of June and they want to have a conversation that day about the middle linebacker position and how it might work and how the defense is going to be built around them. That is the way fans operate. So that's what I try to do on this show. Thank you so much for tuning in, by the way. This has been the most phenomenal April that we've ever had. The most phenomenal non-football month that we've ever had, with over 125 YouTube downloads and views in 1 month of the off season. If you want to think about what baseball is doing right now, basketball is kind of being done. Football is driving this ship in April. Absolutely amazing indeed. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Ole Miss got kind of a surprise defection from running back Kedrick Reescano, but what will the Rebels do now? And do they have to do anything? Gametime, sorry, read the wrong thing. Gametime is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, what makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Talk about your favorite experience or best thing of getting tickets and going to all that. That is an example of something you're going to do. You're going to go to the content section. You're going to say, hey, I went to the Detroit Tigers versus the Tampa Bay Rays, and I used the Gametime app and picked out a ticket to where I could see that sweet left-handed batting swing and was able to do that. It was amazing. It was a great game. The Tigers won the game, though, which was an important part of it. But the way I got in there, I got the seats I wanted to sit in, parked in the best parking lot imaginable. It took like 5 minutes to get from my car to the stadium. And since it was Tropicana Field, all of that was possible because of the views from the seats and all of that in the Gametime app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV. In the free Fire TV channels app, Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. So yesterday we did have the surprise defection of Kedrick Reescano into the transfer portal, and best of luck to the young man and that family. I had it on good authority that 2 days ago this was completely different, and then all of a sudden something changed. We don't know what exactly changed, but something changed. And whenever you look at the fact that Kedrick Reescano transferred out, Kevin Smith tweeted out this morning a chess piece. I don't know if it's transfer portal, I don't know if it's high school recruiting, but something happened that caused them that was completely rock solid 48 hours ago to look around. Okay? That is an indisputable fact. But you look at it, I think 2025 running back might be the avenue that is fine, because I don't think Ole Miss necessarily needs anything else. If you look at what they have on campus right now. Let's start with Ulysses Bentley IV. 95 carries, 540 yards, 4 touchdowns. He is a little bit injury prone. He has missed time in every single season, but he's good for about 100 to 120 carries in the course of a season, 540 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Then you add in the Henry Parrish, who is that Henry Parrish type running back who was the leading rusher for the Miami Hurricanes a year ago, 100 carries, 625 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's another 100 to 120 carries. So let's just say that's 200 to 240 carries. And then you have a Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who last season ran for 190 carries, 1,190 yards, 17 touchdowns. Let's just say 175 carries for the benefit of doing that. You're looking at right there about 350 carries, which honestly, taking out the quarterback runs might be the total number of carries during the season. As I sit here and think about it, I know I've talked about a thumper for weeks at this point, and it was real. And I was trying to think of ways that you could substitute that thumper in this offense with what we already have. And a lot of people assumed that was Kedrick Reescano. Kedrick was not that type of a back. He's not the Quinshon Judkins back. He had the great feet, and he has a miraculous career in front of him, but he is not that thumper. So that's the reason Trent Howland was talked about. That's the reason Damian Rodriguez was talked about, or Damian Martinez, was talking about, because of a thumper running back for Ole Miss. Now, how do you do that with the personnel that you already have? Now, you have a profile of the similar running back 3 times, okay? When you look at UB4, when you look at Jacory Croskey-Merritt and Henry Parrish, all similar profile running backs. Maybe Croskey-Merritt can be a Snoop Connor type that has a little bit of a thumper to it, but how do you add that thumper element into your offense? And I think you do that with 12 personnel. I do think it is genuinely something that you need to look for is a blocking type tight end, and see if Ole Miss brings that into their offense in this summer spring transfer portal. If not, you have Daquan Wright, who I had on my show, very nice young man, answered all the questions, talked about how hard he worked on his blocking at Virginia Tech. He went there as essentially a flex tight end type jumbo wide receiver. And then you have Caden Priestcorn, who is an exceptional blocker. And honestly, anybody would be happy to do it. 12 personnel would change the formula a little bit of Ole Miss on offense. And I know I've talked 3 years about 12 personnel. I get that, understandably. But 12 personnel would allow you to beef up a little bit and have a 4-minute type offense, especially with the Jacory Croskey-Merritt. Henry Parrish, who is a good all-around running back, and UB40, he's just a good back on the outside. You're going to see him run a lot of outside zone type plays and things like that. The running back, in my opinion, is kind of where it needs to be. Okay? It's where it needs to be. And I've talked about, if Ole Miss adds no running back, this is a top 5 running back room in all of college football. If they add no one. If they do, it could change a little bit, but only add something that has a role that can help you out. Don't just add to add. Add somebody that can help you. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we are the number one Ole Miss podcast, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV Channels app. And for those of you on YouTube, we're going to send you there right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.